Update. Am I the a-hole for assuming I'd inherit my mother's house? Original story. My female 20s mother raised me and my sister 20s as a single parent in a single income household. We've rented our whole lives and grew up low middle class. We never went without food or other essentials, but didn't have the luxuries of many wants. I started investing when I was 17 through my mother, and have been somewhat successful through it. I have accumulated enough money to afford a down payment on a house in our neighborhood/city. I have decided to pursue a second degree at college to further my career/job opportunities, and currently have a part-time job which is not enough to support a mortgage. I currently rent with a roommate. Me and my mother have an extremely good relationship, and I used to joke growing up that when I'm older and have money, I'd buy a house and let her live with me so she doesn't have to worry about her living situation/a mortgage/paying rent when she's older. I told my mother about my plan to buy a house, and pitched the idea that I'd give her the money as a down payment and should pay the mortgage. She has a very stable job now and can afford to keep up on a mortgage. The down payment was the issue as she didn't have enough saved to afford our city. She didn't want to feel burdened to me, but I really want to do this for her. I would move in and contribute some money to rent for utility/mortgage. It's a beneficial situation for both of us. Eventually, in 20 plus years, when my mom retires or whenever she wants to retire, I should have a stable career and be able to take over the remainder of her mortgage, if she still had one. We all agreed on this, and both extremely excited about starting the process. I was fine with the house being in my mother's name, but this is where the conflict came up. When I agreed for it to be in my mother's name, it was because I'd still be able to live there, would inherit it in the future, and it would eventually be in my name anyway. My mother disagreed, and said she would leave it to both me and my sister 50-50. I didn't understand as my sister was not contributing financially to this house while I was. I told my mother that I would not give her the money for a down deposit if I didn't solely inherit it in the future. She called me selfish for making her leave my sister with nothing, but I disagree. My sister has never had much focus or priority on her future or career. It is quite materialistic. She hardly saves. It has a boyfriend who she'll 98% marry eventually and have children with. I personally want to be child-free, and knowing my sister, she'll believe she's more deserving as she will have a family. Also, if she knew about my mother and I were buying a house but still inheriting it in the future, there is a 0 chance she'd save for her own place. She'd wait till our mother passed and assume she'd be able to move in. Am I the a-hole for demanding/assuming I'd inherit my mother's house? Edit. Sorry for not clarifying. I'd be paying the deposit plus at least 40% of the mortgage over time. My bank denied my application for a loan. Now for the top comments before reading the update. Tough call, to be honest. But why don't you save yourself the headache and put the house in your name and charge your mom rent? Thank you for the advice. Honestly, I never considered that. I just wanted her to have the security of knowing she owned a house. Something she'd always talked about as we grew up. I might have a talk with her about this option though. I think this would be the best option. She still has security, but you retain ownership. I would never put money into a house without it being in my name. I don't care if your mother agrees with you on everything today. She can change her mind at any time, and God knows what her will says if she has one. I wholeheartedly trust her, but now I'm reconsidering not having my name on the deed. She just knows more about these sorts of things, and I figured it would be easier. Don't trust her. This is a huge investment. Put your name on the house, even if she swears she will leave you the house in full eventually. If you don't get your name on the deed, you will regret it. Not the a-hole. Wait until you can fully afford a home in your name, then buy your home and allow mom to move in. My mom wants to buy a house now and is already looking 3 hours plus outside of the city. She wants to stay in the city but is financially scared about not owning a house at her age. I'm now seriously considering buying a house in my name, but don't think I'm as desirable to the bank for a loan as my mother is, as I'm still in school. And now for the update. To start this off, I have decided to not purchase a house at this moment. I sat down to talk about this decision with my mom and gave the following requests that would make me comfortable with purchasing a house with her. 1. Both our names would be on the deed/mortgage with a joint tenancy. This would mean that when either of us passed, it would automatically be passed on to the other and not counted as estate. This was the one I liked best. 2. I donate a portion of the down deposit, not all, and consider it a gift. 3. After discussing with an estate lawyer and financial advisor, we do it in a very legal way with signed documents and everything, dictating my percentage, my mother's, maximum payoff my sister could receive if I wanted to buy her share, saw this in a comment, etc. I said I would only consider this option if my percentage was 51% or above. Both names of the mortgage, indeed. 4. Nothing, and we both do our own thing. My mother took the day to discuss these options and said she didn't feel comfortable not leaving anything for my sister when she passes. And like a lot of you guys said, I realized we just aren't compatible. I tried to tell her why I wanted it this way, so I would have financial security in the future, but also so I could help her. But she said I was being heartless to not consider my sister's future. She tried to negotiate option 3, but at only 50% guaranteed to me. I know that selfishly that's not a beneficial situation for me to be in, but I just can't bring myself to agree to that. I would pay for all of the deposit, then 40% of the mortgage, and still just get half even if I didn't do the following. This would also set me back years to buy a house I would actually own. I was also worried after reading comments that she would go and leave her portion to my sister, making it 50-50 anyway. My mother said I was selfish for going back on my word and forcing her to choose between me and my sister, and that I should realize I'm a part of a family before seeing her or my sister again. I feel bad for putting conditions on this offer, but this was never a gift or anything like that. It was an opportunity for both of us to buy a house, but all of our options don't seem to be mutually beneficial. We haven't talked for the past 2 days, and I don't really see the situation having much more closure to this. My plan is to finish school and work a few years before committing to buying a home, but thank you for all the advice you have given me. I'm sad that it ended like this, but hope not too much damage was done in the long run. Your mother is very worried about the prospect of not leaving an inheritance for your sister, yet it seems to have escaped her notice that if you pay for half of the house and end up with 50% while your sister also gets 50%, she has left nothing to you. You would be tying up a lot of money for decades, missing out on other opportunities for investment in order to facilitate an inheritance for your sister. I think that you're better off not being part of this. Save your resources to buy your own home. Yeah, Opie's mother was definitely planning on leaving her entire half to the sister. I could understand it if the Opie's mother felt that it would be unfair to leave the sister with nothing, but at minimum, the Opie should end up with 75% of the house. The half she would pay for plus half of the mother's half as an inheritance. Given the mother's attitude, I think that the Opie should steer clear. If the mother is determined to make sure that the sister ends up with 50% of the house, she could be capable of doing whatever it takes to achieve this goal, even if it means going against an agreement made with the Opie. For example, even if the house is purchased as joint tenants, the Opie's mother can sever the joint tenancy, which would leave them as tenants in common, and she could then will her share to the Opie's sister. Likewise, she could promise the Opie whatever percentage of her share she liked, and then make a will leaving everything to the sister. Even if the Opie was able to get her to sign a contract regarding the inheritance of the house, it could cost more than the house would be worth to enforce it in court. The reality is, without you, your mom isn't leaving your sister anything. You are paying for your sister's inheritance. There is no scenario here where you are not transferring your wages to your sister. You're better off just buying your own house in your own name and letting your mom live with you. Yes, I really don't understand why this wasn't the plan all along. Now for the next story. Am I the a-hole for telling my son to get over himself, man up, and stop publicly calling his wife a deadweight? My son and his wife are 25 and 27, and I'm 45. They both worked full-time until a few months ago when his wife had to stop for reasons that aren't mine to share. And my son has become insufferable. It recently culminated in me telling him he needed to stop whining about the situation and man up. I love my son very much, but he's always online posting about how hard he has to work, or going on unprovoked monologues about the stresses of being a family sole breadwinner. He does this openly, doesn't even try to hide it from his wife. It clearly makes her feel bad, or like she's not pulling her weight. Since he also talks about having to do everything around the house and care for his wife since she's on IR for now. I talked to her, and she told me she wasn't bothered by anything but him claiming he does everything at home. Because according to her, he doesn't. When I pointed everything out to him, he said, well, you and her can't understand what it's like to be the sole income of a household, and that I should ask Dad, since he could tell you. His father was the sole breadwinner for a long time. I work too now, though, but yes, he knows what it's like. But he, his father, or my father were never this dramatic. I never once heard my husband or Dad express any worry over bearing the entire burden. These were men. They didn't do that. They manned up and kept it moving. Sure, they may have felt a little uneasy about it, but they didn't dwell on it. And they certainly didn't belittle their wife's contributions and lie about doing everything at home as well. My daughter pointed out that he is my son, and I should be standing up for his wife if it means putting him down. But I'm just tired of him moaning and groaning in person and online about his situation, along with basically saying his wife is not pulling her weight. Edits below. I've seen several people point out that my dad and husband aren't from this generation and reference today's economy. But I have to point out that my son-in-law is the sole breadwinner, and he doesn't badmouth my daughter or whine about things. My 19-year-old nephew works two lower-paying jobs to pay the bills for his girlfriend and their newborn. So it's literally only my son who whines about his situation, while expecting sympathy for staying with his basically helpless wife. It isn't okay with me. I'm not sure what your son thinks he's going to gain by shaming his wife in public like that, but nothing wrong with you telling him to deal with it. He is possibly not thinking tactically, but if he continues, I see a divorce in my crystal ball. And all these exaggerating social media posts about being the sole breadwinner are going to be fantastic for Opie's son when it comes time to calculate alimony. No offense, but what planet is your daughter living on? It's okay to love your son unconditionally, but you also can't let him say these sort of things. And the fact that you won't reveal what's wrong with his wife only proves that it's bad, and he shouldn't say these things. Edit. The daughter I'm referring to is the one that Opie mentioned in the final paragraph. Unconditional love means I love you when you're being a jerk and an idiot. Also means I'm going to tell you that you're being a jerk and an idiot, and I'm going to tell you to do better because I know you can be better. Unconditional love doesn't mean that I think the sun shines out your rear end 24/7 and that you leave rainbows in the toilet. The phrase man up is a little outdated. Maybe you could say grow up instead because he's acting like a little brat. Just because you're his mother doesn't mean you have to put him on a pedestal and take his side in every single situation. Good for you for calling him out. Now for the last story. Am I the a-hole for hiring a babysitter to watch my son when my ex had an emergency? My 30 male ex-fiancé, 28 female, and I have a 3-year-old son together. We broke off our engagement just over a year ago and have a 50-50 custody split. We split time with our son every 2 weeks as my ex moved over an hour away, and making the drive every week was too much. Since switching to the 2-week schedule, it has been better for everyone. I just started dating again a few months ago, and I have been seeing someone quite regularly for about 6 weeks now. This past weekend, we had a date scheduled for Saturday night at a nice restaurant and tickets to go see a show. It was supposed to be our first nice dress-up date, as our previous times together have been more informal, like coffee, walks in the park, bowling, etc. Early Saturday morning, my ex calls me. She's frantic and tells me she needs me to come get our son because she's having a family emergency. Apparently, her sister was in a car accident and she's in a hospital a few hours away. My ex wants to go immediately as it seems pretty serious, but she doesn't want to haul our son with. I agree right away and get to my ex's place as soon as I can. When I get home with my son, I contact my date and let her know that an emergency came up and I now have my son. I apologize and tell her I probably have to cancel our date. She says she understands, but asks if I would consider hiring a babysitter, and she has a friend who is a nanny and she might be available. She says we can skip dinner and just go to the show, so that my son will be almost asleep by the time I would have to leave. I think that's a pretty good idea, so she says she will reach out to her friend. Her friend was free and agreed to babysit, so I get her contact info and talk over the plan with her. By the time she arrives at my place, my son is already asleep, and I have just enough time to meet my date at the show. I put my phone on silent for the show, and when I checked it after the show ended, my ex had called a few times and left a bunch of texts. I excused myself to call her. She immediately flipped out on me for not answering, and it made her think something terrible happened, especially with her mindset with her sister's accident. I told her that our son was at home asleep with a babysitter as I was out on a date. This made her flip out even more, and she told me if she knew I was going to pawn our son off on a babysitter so I could go on a date, she would have never called me to get him. She said this is a huge breach of trust, and it makes her seriously question my judgment. I told her our son was fine and tried to ask about her sister, but she told me not to try and change the subject. She called me an a-hole and told me she would be coming to get our son as soon as she can. The whole thing pretty much ruined my evening. My ex got our son yesterday afternoon and we fought about it. I don't think I did anything wrong, but she sure does. Not the a-hole. Adults have lives, and sometimes that requires a babysitter to stay home with the kids. Does she expect your son to never ever be without one of you? I'm actually so surprised by the anti responses. There's using a sitter and there's this. 1. Not introducing sitter to the child. 2. Having son fall asleep before the sitter, who is a stranger, shows up. 3. Not telling child about going out and sitter being there. Edit. Apparently did tell kid at least. 4. Leaving phone on do not disturb so calls aren't heard during an entire movie. 5. Having this potentially be the child's first ever experience with a sitter at dad's house. This comment says never used one before. 6. For a 3-year-old, this is kind of breaking every rule of getting a sitter. Maybe for an emergency I could see some of it, but for a date? He's lucky that kid stayed asleep. Had kiddo woken up? It could have been very upsetting. Does she expect her son to never ever be without one of you? This is such a total misrepresentation of the problem here. You're the a-hole. You're the a-hole. Not for the idea of a babysitter, which is how you're trying to position this. 1. You never mentioned any scheduled conflict to your ex, so she assumed you would be caring for your son. You should have touched base with your ex when you later decided to keep the date and hire a sitter. That would have given your ex the option to come back if she felt uncomfortable about it. 2. You should have had your phone on vibrate in the movie so you could at least be aware of your ex, or the babysitter, trying to reach you. Really irresponsible for a parent. Your date night shouldn't supersede your obligation to care for your son, especially when he has never been left with a sitter. And this is a sitter you don't even know. Throw COVID in there as well as a concern. Your girlfriend is an a-hole for suggesting this plan. Update. Am I the a-hole? My mom feels my sister should have married my husband instead of me. Original post. I'm upset with my mom and sister because of something my mom said, but everyone around me feels like I'm overreacting. And I need an honest opinion about whether I'm being insecure or if my mom and husband are wrong. Here's some backstory. My husband, James, 34 male, and I, 29 female, grew up as neighbors. My sister, Fran, 34 male, was in the same grade as James. Everyone knew Fran because she was smart and beautiful, and James had a huge crush on her. He asked her to the senior prom, but she turned him down in front of the whole school. Despite that, they stayed friends. After high school, James moved to a different state for college, and we didn't hear much from him except during the holidays. James and I weren't friends growing up, because I was in middle school when all this happened, and I was much younger. Fran and James would often hang out together, excluding me. Later, I went to college and got my first job in the same city where James was living. My mom suggested I reach out to him since I didn't know anyone in the area. We became friends, and 3 years later, we got married. We both have good jobs and love our life together. We moved back to our hometown during COVID to be closer to James's mom who had health issues, and because we could work remotely. Fran had a good life for a while too. She got married at 23 to a well-off man. But 2 years ago, she found out he had been cheating on her for most of their marriage. So she left him and moved back in with our mom. Fran hadn't worked during her marriage and expected to receive significant alimony. But due to complications with a prenup, she got very little and has been struggling financially. She found a job but can't afford her own place yet, so she's still living with our mom. James and I supported her during the divorce. Since he and Fran were friends growing up, they have a close bond with inside jokes and shared stories, which sometimes makes me feel like a third wheel. Although James makes an effort to include me and explain things. Fran visits us frequently, 2 to 3 times a week, often staying for dinner and sleeping in our guest room. She usually comes over when I'm not home, and I often find them sitting next to each other on a sofa when I get back. It reminds me of my childhood when Fran would exclude me from her social activities. Fran is also very comfortable around James, walking around in just a towel or sleeping in a guest room in her underwear with the door unlocked. I've expressed my concerns to her, but she dismisses them, saying we're a family and it's no big deal. I've talked to James about it, and while he now tries to include me more in conversations, I still feel uneasy. The main issue occurred last weekend when I was with my mom and Fran. Fran was reminiscing about how James used to do her homework and chores. She said he was so in love with me, and I felt guilty taking advantage of him. My mom then jokingly said, "I wish you had been smart enough to marry James instead of your loser husband. You wouldn't be in this situation now." Fran just smiled and nodded, but I was hurt. I told my mom that James is my husband, and I didn't appreciate her making comments like that. My mom doubled down, saying that it made sense for Fran to have married James because both he and I are financially successful while Fran is struggling. She said it was just hypothetical and that she only wanted both her daughters to be happy. I didn't like these comments and told them not to talk about my marriage like that. Fran then said I was being too sensitive. I ended up arguing with both of them and leaving. When I got home and told James what happened, he sided with my mom and Fran, saying my mom's comments was just a harmless joke. I also brought up Fran's behavior in our house, but he said that was an issue between me and Fran, and he wasn't going to tell her what she could or couldn't wear. Despite the apologies I received afterward, I still feel uneasy. Am I overreacting, or do I have the right to be upset? Should I be more secure in my relationship with James? Now for the top comments before reading the update. Not the a-hole. Your mother's comments was inappropriate and disrespectful towards your marriage. And it's concerning that your husband is dismissing your feelings about Fran's behavior. It's not about insecurity, it's about wanting respect in your relationship at home. This has been a pattern throughout my life. Due to age difference, Fran has always treated me like a kid. I just felt insulted that my mom completely ignored my feelings while making such comments. However, a part of me also has been jealous of Fran because of all the attention she got, and I was the nerdy little weird girl in our family. Not the a-hole. They're viewing a husband as nothing but a pocketbook and a lovesick boy. I wonder how your dad would feel if he knew his wife was talking about marriage like that. Unfortunately, my dad left us when I was 4, so I would not put any value of what he thinks about any of this situation. I also do not understand how me being financially independent has anything to do with not needing a husband that I love dearly. Not the a-hole. If I was you, I'd be seriously looking to move away from your hometown and your mom and sister. Would James be on board with that? Not saying James would cheat, but being in close contact with your family seems to have put added stress on your marriage. And you were happier before the COVID move. This would be a bit tricky at this time because James's mom needs us right now due to her health issues. Moreover, we also bought our house last year, so we are stuck in this place for better or for worse. I'm waiting for a friend to try attempt something with your husband within 3 to 6 months. Also, you need to tell her no more sleepovers or just showing up. And put some clothes on for God's sake. And this is a firm boundary. And no, you don't care if they think you're overreacting. This is how it's going to be. All these comments have me really alarmed. I am going to talk to my husband regarding this. I do not want to be accusatory, but this whole situation has made me really insecure, and I was barely able to sleep last night. I trust him with all my heart, but I really am rethinking all the things Fran has done around him, and how she has undermined and belittled my feelings on every occasion. As for my mom, I got a half-apt apology from her last night about how she just blurted out something stupid, and how I am overreacting to all this, and she only wishes the best for both her daughters. Now for the update. Thank you everyone for your support on my previous post. The comments really made me anxious, and I started considering that James might have married me because of his crush on Fran. This thought increased my anxiety, and I started feeling paranoid. However, James has always been open with me. He even asks me to check his phone for new messages when he's not around, so I knew there was nothing suspicious there. Still, I felt uneasy about how Fran always seems to know when I'm not home, and why I often find her and James sitting together on a couch when I come back. I tried talking to James about my feelings, and while he acknowledged that my concerns were valid, he also pointed out that Fran is going through a tough time and refused to say anything negative about her or my mom. Last Friday, I went to the gym as usual, and when I came home, Fran was in the living room while James was cooking dinner. I felt frustrated and asked her what she was doing here. She said she didn't have any plans for the night and just came to hang out with us. This irritated me, and I told her that I wanted a quiet weekend with my husband and asked if she could come some other time. She could tell I was upset and started saying that my mom's comments were just silly jokes that I needed to let go. I told her I didn't find it funny, and we ended up having a fight. Fran accused me of always being insecure and annoying, just like when we were kids, and said no one liked me. Her words hurt deeply, but at that moment James stepped in and told Fran she needed to leave. I had never seen him be so firm with her before. Fran muttered some unpleasant things to James as she left, and I ended up in tears, spending the night in our room alone. The next morning, I prepared a list of everything I wanted to discuss with James. He Her comments helped me organize my thoughts. I was feeling very insecure and started questioning whether James married me for who I am or just because I'm Fran's sister and look like her. People used to call me Dollar Store Fran in high school. When James and I sat down for a long conversation, I told him about my anxieties and insecurities, including how it bothered me that he spends so much time with Fran and shares inside jokes with her. I asked if he still had any lingering feelings for her. He was calm and reassuring throughout the conversation. He said he would be honest with me, but he didn't want me to resent him for it later. He explained that he knew Fran had used him during their school days because she was aware of his crush. When he went to college, Fran still tried to stay in touch, but the distance made him realize how badly she treated him. That's when he decided to cut contact and focus on himself. He said that was the reason he didn't visit often during holidays and eventually stopped being close friends with Fran. I told him I always felt like his second choice because he had chosen Fran over me when we were younger. He said I was only 13 at a time, and if he had liked me back then, we'd be facing a very different kind of issue now. He admitted that when I first reached out to him, he thought I would be just like Fran and wasn't too keen on meeting me. But after we spent time together, he realized I was nothing like her. We soon became close, started dating, and eventually got married. He also mentioned that when we got together, Fran was already married, and he saw how I often put her on a pedestal, feeling jealous whenever she posted pictures of vacations or new things her husband bought for her. He didn't tell me then that he didn't enjoy being around Fran because he knew that, in my mind, she was someone I looked up to. He explained that since Fran's divorce, he wasn't sure how to act around her. He said he was grateful to me for uprooting our lives to move back to our hometown for his mom's health and wanted to support my family the same way. When Fran's marriage ended, he tried to be there for her, out of support for me, even though it meant spending more time with her and revisiting old high school memories he would rather forget. I expressed my concern about Fran knowing my gym schedule and always coming over when I'm not around. He agreed that it was odd, but reassured me that he had always maintained a respectful distance and would have told me if anything seemed inappropriate. He said she mainly just talks about old movies, TV shows, and gossips about high school friends. James said he was willing to be the bad guy if I wanted him to tell Fran to visit less often, but he also mentioned that I'd probably reconcile with Fran and my mom eventually. So he didn't want to be blamed for being mean. However, he wasn't comfortable telling Fran what she could or couldn't wear around the house, as he thought it would be inappropriate coming from him. I felt reassured by his responses and realized I need to trust him more. On Sunday, my mom and Fran came over. My mom apologized sincerely, saying she didn't mean to make me feel bad with her comments and never wished any harm on my marriage. She just wanted to emphasize how great a guy James is and hoped Fran could find someone like him someday. Fran was a bit distant but did apologize for her behavior, blaming it on hormones. She explained that she likes spending time with her sister and best friend, which is why she visits often. I told her she's always welcome but should call ahead in case James and I have plans, and she agreed. I want to move past this, but I think it's important to set some boundaries around Fran's visits, especially when I'm not home, as I know it bothers James too. Overall, I feel like things are better now, but I realize I still need therapy to deal with my insecurities. I'm relieved that my worst fears didn't come true and that I have an amazing husband who is supportive and understanding. I don't know if Fran ever had thoughts about seducing your husband, but I think she was basking in his attention and was definitely living in a what-if world. She's divorced and financially insecure. Your husband was a potential future that she turned down. When she is over at your house, alone with her husband, she can pretend that that is her life. Married and financially secure to a man who at one time worshipped the ground she walked on. However, your husband doesn't feel that way anymore. I think you can trust his words on that. It sounds like he really just doesn't feel comfortable being the one to set boundaries because he doesn't want to hurt her feelings. And she's your sister. Create your boundaries. No more sleepovers, always be appropriately dressed, and don't come over suddenly. Call first, and be firm. These are not unreasonable boundaries. You're literally living in the same town. There's no reason for her to sleep over. Don't let your guard down just yet. Your sister especially hasn't completely earned your trust. It wouldn't surprise me if Fran tried to start trouble sooner or later. She sounded more petulant than apologetic. Last story. Am I the a-hole for refusing to attend my brother's wedding because of the way his fiancé treated my wife? So my 32 male brother, 29 male, is getting married next month. I was originally excited, but things took a turn when his fiancé, 27 female, made some hurtful comments about my wife, 30 female. For context, my wife has fibromyalgia, which affects her energy levels and sometimes requires her to need extra support. It's something we've navigated together for years. At a recent family event, my brother's fiancé told my wife, in front of everyone, that it was selfish of her to consider having a baby given her condition. She implied that raising a child with fibromyalgia would be a burden on me and suggested we think about adoption instead. My wife was mortified. She tried to brush it off in the moment, but I could tell how deeply it affected her. After we left, she broke down in tears, saying she felt judged and humiliated. The next day, I called my brother to talk about it. I wasn't necessarily expecting an apology from his fiancé, but I at least hoped my brother would recognize how hurtful her comment was. Instead, he defended her, saying she didn't mean it that way. She's just direct. You know how she is. That response really upset me. I told him it wasn't about how she is. It was about showing respect, especially to family. He dismissed my concerns, saying I was overreacting. After thinking it over, I decided that I wouldn't attend the wedding if his fiancé couldn't acknowledge how inappropriate her comment was. My brother called me dramatic and accused me of ruining his big day over a small comment. Now my parents are involved, urging me to let it go for the sake of family harmony. They believe I'm being unreasonable for skipping my brother's wedding over one awkward moment. But my wife feels validated by my decision, and honestly, so do I. I don't think we should have to tolerate that kind of disrespect just to keep the peace. So, am I the a-hole? Not the a-hole. Your brother's fiancé was out of line, and your brother defending her is unacceptable. It wasn't just a small comment, it was hurtful and disrespectful to your wife. You're not being dramatic. You're setting boundaries. If they can't respect you and your wife, you're completely justified in skipping the wedding. Family harmony doesn't mean putting up with disrespect. It's exactly how I feel. Family harmony shouldn't come at the expense of my wife's well-being. I didn't want to make this a big thing, but when my brother brushed it off, it felt like he was choosing convenience over us. At the end of the day, I just want to stand by my wife and not let this kind of disrespect slide. If your brother and your parents were concerned about family harmony, why didn't they insist on a fiancé apologizing to your wife? That whole concept goes both ways. My brother, and I guess his fiancé now, has never been the one to apologize. The fiancé should apologize for the sake of family. She is being way too dramatic and tearing the family apart. Why would she poison the relationship between family this way and ruin her husband's wedding day by being so hateful and dramatic? I mean, that's just you being you being honest, just the way you are. No? There's your answer. I've never really thought of using the same argument before. Please do. It generally helps those members of the family break free of the familiar emotional ruts/family dynamic and see reason. In your case, it might help your parents see just how nasty and disrespectful your future sister-in-law was being to your wife and you. Suggest to them that we don't welcome new daughter-in-law to the family by allowing her to take a few pot shots at existing daughter-in-law. That's not cool. It likely won't help your future sister-in-law or brother to see the light. When you say they rarely apologize, that says a whole lot about the kind of people they are. Short of a true apology to both you and your wife, feel free to skip the wedding. Update. Am I the a-hole for telling my mom she's dead to me if she mentors my bully? Original post. So my 16 male mom 40s is a teacher at my school. Our school has a special elective you can take, which is being a teacher's aide during your elective period. It's mostly stuff like grading papers for them, making copies, mentoring, etc. It's pretty much always just the teacher's favorite student at a time. I found out at the beginning of the semester that my mom chose Dave, 17 male, to be her teacher's assistant. Dave has made my life a living nightmare since middle school. He has bullied me mercilessly both physically and emotionally since 6th grade. I don't want to get into everything he's done to me, but everyone is fully aware of it, including the school and my parents. There have been countless meetings with school administration and suspensions on his end, but it never stopped him. Since we've been in high school, I haven't had to see him as much, which is a relief, but the times that I do are always terrible. When I found out that he was her new teacher's assistant, I was obviously very hurt and confused. I asked her, why would you want to spend extra time with someone who made my life so terrible? She said that she had him in one of her classes, and that he really isn't such a bad kid, but he has a really terrible home life that she can't tell me about that makes him act out. For the record, my mom has always had a soft spot for kids who come from bad homes. I reminded her of all the things he had done to me, and she said that she understands, but he really needs help right now. I told her I get that, but why does it have to be you? We have a huge school full of teachers and staff who can mentor him. Why does it have to be you? She told me to stop being selfish, and some kids have it harder than I can imagine, and she's just trying to help. I was honest with her and told her that if she continued to have him as her aide, she was dead to me. She was choosing him over me, and she would no longer be my mother. I would no longer talk to her, and the minute I turned 18, I was moving out, and she would never hear from me again. She rolled her eyes and said I was being dramatic, but after a couple of days of ignoring her, I was grounded. It didn't change my mind, and my dad then tried to force me to talk to her. I still refused, so they pretty much took everything away from me one by one for the past few weeks. I no longer have my car, computer, guitar, and most recently my art supplies. And I have to come home from school and go straight to my room, and I'm not allowed out except dinner until I start talking to her again. They don't realize that this is just strengthening my resolve. I'm going to sit in this empty room every day silently until I'm 18, and they'll never see me again. My mom keeps coming in crying and begging me to talk to her, which makes me feel kind of bad, but she still won't remove Dave as her aide. Am I taking this too far? I just feel so betrayed. Now for the top comments before reading the update. I'm sure Dave has a rough life, but it doesn't excuse his cruelty towards you. I would be extremely hurt if my mom sided with my bully. Your mom should ask one of her colleagues to take him on as an aide, and then tell Dave that given his prior history with you, it is no longer appropriate for him to be her aide. Unfortunately, she's obviously not going to do that, since she herself has resorted to bullying her own child for not just getting over it. The fact that they are punishing OP over this is wildly devastating. An ongoing conversation would have been one thing, but to see your child so upset and hurt and punish them for it, mom is freaking depraved. Yes, OP, tell your mother you now understand why she chose to mentor Dave. She's just as much a bully as he is, so it's no wonder they get along so freaking well. Not the a-hole. If my mother would have done that to me or one of my brothers, we would have treated her like a traitor. She puts her savior complex, or whatever this is, over your mental health. She is in addition to that disloyal to your family. Just ignore her and organize your life. Do good in school and leave her behind when you are old enough and independent. I cannot even compute how people do this to their own blood, but here we are. I wish you the best. I couldn't figure out what was bugging me about this. It's the mom's savior complex. You got it down perfectly. She wants to be the teacher who reformed her son's bully at the expense of her relationship with her son. Well, when it's finally shown she's a bad parent and he bails at 18, she'll get her recognition. Charity is great when you make others suffer for it and you get all the credit. There's a saying, it is easy to be generous with other people's money. Now for the update. A lot has actually happened since last week, and while nothing is really fixed, I think things are going in the right direction. On Friday, I got called out of class to the guidance counselor. When I got there, my mom and the assistant principal were there as well. The counselor asked me to sit down and said that me changing tracks from college to trade, like I mentioned in my last post, was a big decision. And she wanted to sit down with my mom and me to figure out if this really was the best for my future. She first asked me if I would fully explain why I wanted to switch. I explained the whole situation from my perspective and about how I was being punished. I said that if this is how I was going to be treated from now on, I wanted to become independent as soon as possible, and going to college would have me relying on my parents for longer than I would like. She then asked my mom if she had anything she would like to add. My mom tried to downplay the whole situation at first and make it look like I was just being stubborn and disrespectful. But as the counselor asked her more questions, it became pretty clear that my side was truth. After this, the assistant principal stepped in and said that a teacher's aide was not worth all of this turmoil and that Dave would be switched with another teacher. The counselor then asked me if this would help me to start working things out with my mom. I said not really, because it wasn't even her choice, and she hasn't even admitted she's done anything wrong. She then asked my mom if she was willing to apologize for anything that had happened. My mom gave a half-hearted apology, where she said things had gone overboard and she never meant to hurt me so much. The counselor asked if I would like to apologize for anything as well, and I said not really, but nobody pressed me on it. The counselor then said about my transfer. It was too late for the semester. What she suggested is that my mom and I, and possibly my dad, should go to a family counselor for the rest of the semester. I would stay in my current classes, my parents would give me all of my stuff back, and we could see if we can come to some kind of peace before next semester. She then asked my mom that if after that I still had not changed my mind, would she accept the class changes. My mom said no at first because she wanted me to go to college, but I told her that she had already failed me as a mother once. Please don't do it again. She got really quiet and said she would agree to it if that was what I really wanted. When I got home, all of my stuff was returned to me. I also started talking to my mom again and just kind of felt like there wasn't a point to ignoring her anymore. I don't treat her like a mother or anything anymore, but I'll answer her if she asks me a question. It just feels like that now that I have a plan, a lot of my anger is gone, and I just see her as a person who happens to live in my house. We haven't scheduled our first counseling session yet, but I don't see it changing much anyway. The damage is done, so I don't see myself changing my mind. That's pretty much it. I probably won't update again unless something crazy happens or something. Thank you to everyone who gave me good advice. Update us when you graduate, or let us know how the trade route goes, or update us once you finish the semester. We're all here cheering you on. Honestly, I'm glad that you got your stuff back. But it's wild to me that it took your assistant principal saying WTF this isn't worth it to switch out Dave. I think your plan is good. The fact that your mom hasn't apologized speaks volumes. I won't count that half-baked apology. Yes, I really don't understand his mom. What is her deal? What is her problem? What is her thought process? It's wild to me that after everything, she still can't see she needs to talk to her kid and explain where her head is at without denigrating her own child. I'm just flabbergasted. Her hero complex is higher than being a parent. I suspect you nailed it right. It's mind-boggling she was willing to hurt her own kid this badly. You either die a hero or you live long enough to see yourself become the villain. I'm so sorry your mother isn't capable of seeing how she's hurting you, but at least it's a change for the better. Having grown up around multiple insanely self-centered and narcissistic grown-ups that pop out children without any expectation of raising them, I believe every word. Fun fact, the worst parent I know, a dude who fathered and abandoned at least 15 children across multiple states, settled down in his 60s and is now raising one son with a random lady. Here's the kicker, by all accounts, he's an amazing dad. People are insane. Next story. Am I the a-hole for snapping back at my mom and saying, why can't you just be like my cousin's mom when she was comparing me to my cousin? I, 16 female, have a cousin, 16 female, who my mom often compares me to. My cousin has really good grades, her lowest being like a 96, while my highest grade is a 73 in PE. Yes, I know it's bad. Me and my mom got into an argument a few days ago about my grades. My grades are a thing we argue about a lot. My mom had checked my grades while I was out at work, and they were 24, 17, 73, 0, 36, non-graded class, 58, and 42. I know they're horrible, but I can't help it. The reason my grades are so low is because I never have the energy or time to do assignments. I wake up, go to school, after school go to work until 11 p.m. on school nights and 1 or 2 a.m. on weekends. Then I go home, clean, and if I have an appetite, then make food and then go to sleep and the cycle repeats. I'm honestly beyond exhausted when I get home. Oftentimes I can't sleep, and I don't even have the energy to change clothes or shower. It's gross, I know. No need to lecture me about it. During our argument, my mom said, "Why can't you be more like your cousin?" It's something she said before, but I was already in a really bad mood and snapped back at her saying, "Why can't you be like cousin's mom?" She looked at me like she saw a ghost, and I started apologizing profusely. She slapped me and told me to go to my room, so I did. That night, I tried to go to talk to her, but she just ignored me. I know what I said was wrong, but I can't help but feel she deserved it. For context, my cousin and her family are pretty wealthy. Her mom is a doctor and her dad is a lawyer, so I'm sure you can imagine their total income. While me and my mom barely survive on our combined income. I have to give her 95% of my paycheck, including all tips, so I don't have much. I'm a waitress, and what I do get goes into food. I often go days without food while my cousin eats out almost every day. They'll invite me, but I can never go due to work or my mom not allowing me. My cousin and her family also go on vacation 3 to 5 times a year, which I'm invited to but can't ever go to. I know my mom tries her best to provide for me and her, as my bio dad bailed out when my mom got pregnant with me, but I often feel myself resent her because I see her going out on dates in luxury restaurants which are all paid for, while I'm stuck at work, starving. While on a date, she always orders more than she can eat and take the rest home for herself. I'm not allowed to have any of it or I'll get in trouble. She'll also often bring guys over, and I'll have to come home after a long day to sounds of my mom having fun in the bedroom. I love my mom so much, but it's been a few days since we talked, and I feel like such a bad daughter. I'd love advice on how to fix things or what to do about this situation. So, am I the a-hole? Now for the top comments. Not the a-hole. I don't get the idea you have that your mother is some kind of a saint. She's busy getting laid while you're working your fingers to the bone paying her rent, and she doesn't even take care of you. Your mother is a piece of turd. Agree, she's a POS. She can't even bother to share the nice food with her hardworking daughter. Sounds like mom is a hoe. I wouldn't be surprised if she isolated a dad away from Opie. Sweetie, there is nothing you need to apologize for. You can let her know this is how you feel every time she says it to you. Your mom should be caring for you and not tearing you down. The fact that she will eat good while you go without is beyond me. Do you have a trusted adult you could talk to? Are you able to get your own account? As a mother, I will say what your mom should say. I am proud of you. Thank you for doing your best while helping your household. The fact that you work and go to school is amazing. Don't ever quit. Please don't think that this is all life has to offer you. I see so much strength and potential in you. You have a fighter spirit. What are your plans for after high school? Thank you. And I have my cousin's parents I can talk to, but it's always with my mom's supervision, and there are some things she forbids me from talking about, which I have not included in this post. About after high school, I don't really have any plans as I know my grades are really bad, so it's likely I won't get into a college or something. Last story. Am I the a-hole for demanding my dad's wife cut her only family out of her life over a prank? My dad married Bridget 10 years ago. My brother and I were a-hole kids who did not like her, so we put purple dye in her specialty purple shampoo for blondes. It didn't even work as well as we thought, because we didn't realize dye needed to soak in, so she was left with a few purple streaks she couldn't get out. Now, I'm not saying it was okay, but Bridget lost her mind. She was hysterical and screaming at my dad she was going to hurt us, saying she would never be in the house with us again. At one point, she began scratching herself because she was so distraught. Bridget ran off and my dad lost his crap on us. He said we ruined his life, and she was the only thing that mattered to him. Bridget refused to return to the house if we were there, so he banned us from the house. Our mom had primary custody anyway. He kept saying he would never forgive us. When I graduated high school, he refused to help me with college. I ended up working multiple jobs to get by, and my brother simply never met. I always thought this would blow over as I thought she was his midlife crisis. As before meeting Bridget, he was the definition of a stoic hard-ass. Nope, he was acting like some obsessed teen boy. Well, we recently reconnected and they're still together. My wife wanted me to play nice with him for financial reasons and for our daughter's future. She even wanted Bridget to help her get a job. My dad is willing to help us out but shows no remorse and says we need to understand she is his life. Well, they recently celebrated their 10th anniversary, and Bridget's brother-in-law decided to reminisce and put some purple stuff in her hair, which is washable, but she had a hell of a time getting it out of her very blonde hair. Don't get me wrong, he got smacked for that. But 1, there was no hysteria. 2, my dad was laughing at her and made her pose for a picture. 3, there was 0 ultimatum. Apparently, he gets a pass because he's a huge prankster. Also, he got her way worse than I did. When I found out about this, I was irate. So it is okay for a grown man to do, but not a dumb kid? I called him up and said that Bridget needed to cut them out of her life if my dad wanted any relationship with me. My dad said I was being ridiculous, as they were her only family and only parent figures. I reminded him I was his freaking kid. He claimed she was much more anxious and insecure when I did it, and claimed that it was different because he did it with love, and she was scared of what my brother and I would escalate to. I told him I hope the next prank is near and they can both buzz off, and unless she cuts out her brother-in-law and sister, no more contact from us. My dad is backing Bridget 100%. Info: how many other pranks were prior to the purple hair dye? That wasn't a prank, they were intentionally malicious. They hated her and wanted to punish her. Sounds like OP hasn't changed much. Yeah, it was a malicious attack. It's different too, coming from someone who hates you and wants to hurt you. So you were 17 when you did your prank to a woman you admit you didn't and still don't like. Of course she had a bad reaction, and her husband backed her up. Do I think it was too far to ban you guys permanently? Yep. But you did have your mom to stay at, who had primary custody. This getting back in touch with dad is financially motivated, by your own words. What her prankster sibling did, while similar, had nothing to do with you. They have an entirely different relationships than you did, as your dad's kids who never liked his wife. Whatever trust was building, you destroyed with that prank. Of course you're the a-hole. You also seem to not realize you have no leverage when it comes to your dad. You only came back around for financial reasons, and for this pawns you apparently can't even support yourself. So how is you threatening to cut contact from him a threat? You reached out, not him. Idiot. Definition of don't threaten me with a good time. Update. Am I the a-hole for refusing to change my baby's name after I named her after my dad's affair partner? Original post. I, 26 female, just gave birth to my daughter Annabelle. I didn't announce it beforehand because in the past one of my family members stole a baby name and it created a lot of drama. My mom wanted to know, but I was adamant on keeping it a secret. My mom and dad was in the room when I gave birth, and when it was time for me to sign the birth certificate, my mom asked me for the name, and I told her Annabelle. Her face went pale, and my dad didn't look too happy, but he said he loved the name. My mom left a few minutes later claiming she didn't feel well. She said she'll come over in a few days to help with the baby. Now I'm at home with the baby and my mom hasn't talked to me that much. We used to talk every day, so I was confused by this sudden behavior. My sister Emily lives with mom still, so I called her over to talk. When she got to my house, she explained how she overheard dad and mom arguing because about 10 years ago, dad had an affair with a coworker named Annabelle. Mom hasn't been talking to him, and he's been trying to get her to talk. I guess dad, realizing that Emily had come over, decided to come over himself. He asked if there is any way that I can change Annabelle's name. I asked him why to see if he'll tell me the truth, and he did. He admitted to the affair. He begged mom not to leave him, and she stayed, but just hearing that name had always put her in a bad headspace. I told him I can't, and that Annabelle was the name of my husband's grandmother who helped raise him. My dad begged and pleaded for me to change it, saying mom was in the middle of packing her bags and heading to her sister's house. I told him I won't change her name and that it means so much to me and my husband. He began to raise his voice, and immediately my sister yelled back and told him to get the heck out. She told him not to stress me out about a mess he created. He left immediately. I'm not changing my baby's name, but I feel like this is tearing the family apart. What should I do? Now for the top comments before reading the update. Call your mom. Tell her you're so sorry and had zero idea about any of this. Tell her if she wants, she can call your daughter by first and middle name. That might give some separation. Or make a nickname. Tell your mom everything you know about Grandma Annabelle. She liked to knit. She had an infectious laugh. Her eyes were blue. She did ballet. She needs mental separation from her husband's fling. As far as the affair, Dad needs to figure that out. That is between them, and if your baby uncovered feelings, then that's their problem, not yours. They need therapy or a split, not the a-hole. OP's mother politely excused herself and hasn't caused a fuss or tried to get OP to change the name. It unearthed some stuff that made her pack her bags. And looking at the age of OP and her having a sister living at home with the parents, it's easy to think OP's mother thought it was best to stay in the marriage when she had 2 teenage girls to take care of. OP's mother doesn't have to stay anymore now they're grown. I know I'm assuming a lot here. So she's finally able to take a break from the cheating husband. Neither kid knew about it, so that was a lot to hide and bury and play happy families for another decade. The mom is finally reacting. OP's dad is the a-hole here, asking to change the baby's name like that would make his wife forgive and forget. Changing her name now would only add more attention to the name and therefore situation for now and the immediate future. But I love the idea of OP and the husband telling OP's mom all about the actual woman she was named after, all the beautiful things to associate with the influence. That's such a gentle way of claiming the name. Not the a-hole, but be prepared for your mom to probably not having much to do with your kid. Grandma could work on her triggers, but there's no guarantee she could overcome it enough to be a good grandmother to that baby. It's hard work, and sometimes people can't make the hurdle. There's options. I mean, it depends on how triggering it is for her. Because my grandmother never called pickles, she called me princess. Kiddos will often have special names with grandparents. But it's a cruel way for your children to find out that their father cheated on their mother. But points I guess, because they kept it from them and didn't make grown-up problems their kid problems. Damn, why is he raising his voice after mistakes that he made catch up to him? Emotional immaturity and ego. Same reason why he had an affair. Small edit. Annabelle isn't her real name. Her real name only has 3 letters, so a nickname based off her name wouldn't be possible. And a lot of you suggested to change her first name to her middle name, but her middle name is my mom's name, and I don't want to change that. Now for the update. So my sister went over to my aunt's house to talk to my mom about what happened. My mom then came to my house to talk. She broke down saying how sorry she is for being distant, and that it was wrong not to communicate with us about what was happening. She said while the name did shock her at first, she knew how much Annabelle meant to my husband, and that she'll never do anything to discredit the work she put into raising him. I asked why she didn't tell us about the affair. She said because she knew that she was mentally too weak to leave, and the last thing she wanted was to show us it's okay to stay with a man who cheated on you. I asked if she planned on leaving Dad, and she said she doesn't know. She admitted that she never got over the affair and is mad at herself for ruining the moment her granddaughter was born. I told her is there a nickname that she wants to call her by, and she said no, and that she wants to honor the memory of Annabelle's great-grandmother. We hugged it out and talked, so I think everything is okay. I think your mom was hurt by your dad, and it's just a reminder. But your mom totally is awesome to acknowledge that she handled the name reveal poorly and how important your husband's grandmother was. Your mom just sounds super sweet, so I hope you guys are good now. I'd hate for this affair to hurt her relationship with you or your daughter. Right? I really want to give OP's mom a hug. Are you going low contact with dear old dad for the time being? Sounds like he has been acting like a bit of a prick in this situation, coming in hot and raising his voice. That man doesn't have the moral high ground here. The thing is, I've never seen my dad act like that. So I'm going to go no contact until Annabelle is older and I'm healing from the birth. Then I'll see where he's at. And if he still blames me, then I'm going no contact permanently. Yeah, this is not fixed. She's saying things but not feeling them yet. And it's going to seriously hit the fan if she winds up divorced. Or your sister starts harping on her to divorce, because she will 100% associate your kid with her life falling apart. I get this is a possibility, but I'm pretty sure no one will blame my child. My father will 100% be responsible.
Even my aunt told her that the baby is innocent, but that nobody is to blame but my dad. My mom looks up to my aunt and usually listens to her advice. I'm pretty sure my aunt was pushing for her to start a divorce, so it's most likely going to happen. But how will your baby feel when they grow up and potentially hear the story about how they have the same name as their grandpa's affair partner, and their name was the catalyst for their grandparents' divorce? That's a lot to put on a child. Maybe they will never find out, but maybe they will. They will hear the story about the woman who stepped up to take care of her father because his mother was on drugs. They will hear the story about how she saved her grandson from ending himself. They will hear the story about how she worked 2 jobs to save up for his college fund. She will hear the story about how her great-grandmother had to make multiple sacrifices to make it to every football and baseball game. I think that trumps my dad's affair partner. Next story. Am I the a-hole for telling my wife she's freaking wrong and that my mom is right? I, 35 male, have been married to my wife, 32 female, for 5 years, and we've been struggling financially for the past few months. I lost my job about 3 months ago, and while I've found part-time work, it doesn't pay nearly as much as before. We've had to cut back on a lot of things, but it feels like no matter what we do, we're still living paycheck to paycheck, and even pulling from savings. Recently, my mom, 65 female, came over to visit, and she noticed how stressed I was about the money situation. She offered some advice on how we could save money. Things like cutting down on takeout, meal prepping to avoid buying groceries multiple times a week, and switching to cheaper brands. My mom has always been frugal, especially when she was raising me and my siblings on a tight budget. I thought it made sense, especially since we're really trying to save wherever we can. I asked if she was willing to go through our spending and show where we could cut down. My wife agreed with this. She made a whole spreadsheet about our spending, and we are spending way too much on fun stuff. We don't need Starbucks every day and so on. It also became apparent that most of the fun spending was my wife's. My wife did not take the breakdown well and started arguing with my mom that her spreadsheet was wrong. She said that my mom's way of doing things is outdated and doesn't work for us. She doesn't want to give up buying organic produce, and she likes having variety in what we eat each week. I tried to explain that we need to make some sacrifices if we want to get out of this financial hole, but she kept insisting that things weren't as bad as I was making them out to be, and that we just needed to ride it out. My mom left at this point and we were still arguing, and she told me she can't give up her takeout. She also went on about my mom being wrong. That's when I lost my patience and said, "You're freaking wrong. My mom is right. She managed to raise 3 kids on 1 income, and we can't even cut back on groceries for a few months?" My wife got really upset, saying I am being a huge jerk for siding with my mom and that my mom is outdated. She's barely spoken to me since, and now I'm wondering if I went too far. But the way I see it, we need to be realistic about our situation, and my mom's advice could actually help us get back on track. Not the a-hole. Your wife agreed to go through your budget with your mom. Your mom took the time and effort to review things, and then it sounds like your wife was very rude and dismissive. As far as I know, math hasn't changed that much in the last 30 years, so it's not clear how your mom's views are outdated. You are right, the math didn't change. The solution is simple, even if it's unpleasant for a bit. She was fine with your mom's help until it showed where the money is really going. Most of us have been in your shoes one time or another. Tightening up the financial belt is hard, but you do what you have to do to get by. In my experience, after living with less, you actually prefer it. If we get takeout, it's a treat, and planning meals ahead saves a lot of money. Good luck. This is how I do it. I just assumed she only got takeout as special treats. Other stuff as treats, but that spreadsheet made it clear that's not the case. I'm actually shocked she doesn't hate takeout, since it seems she gets it every other day. The person you marry is the most important financial decision of your life. I would be furious if I was struggling to bring in money and my spouse was wasting money on takeout. I was financially abused by my husband, and your wife is doing also what is done to me. Last story. Am I the a-hole for refusing to walk my daughter down the aisle because of what she did to her mom? So this has been an ongoing issue in my family for a while, but now that the wedding is coming up, everything has come to a head. I, 50 male, have a daughter, Emma, 26 female, who I've always had a very close relationship with. I've been married to my wife, Emma's mom, Laura, 49 female, for 30 years now. We're a solid family, or at least I thought we were. Here's the backstory. A couple of years ago, Emma met her now fiancé, Tom, 28 male. Things moved fast between them, and she was head over heels for him. We were happy for her at first, but something changed about a year into their relationship. Emma became distant from us, especially her mom. Laura and Emma used to be really close, but all of a sudden, Emma started snapping at her for little things, avoiding family dinners and not sharing anything about her life. Then we found out why. About a year and a half ago, I overheard Emma and Tom having a conversation when they didn't know I was around. She was saying horrible things about her mom, stuff that really broke my heart. Emma was telling Tom that she couldn't stand how overbearing her mom was, that Laura always tried to control her, and that she felt like Laura was jealous of her life and success. She even said she resents her mom for putting so much pressure on her when she was younger. I was floored. Laura's always supported Emma in everything she did, from helping her through college to emotionally supporting her during rough patches. I never saw any of this coming, but instead of addressing it right then, I wanted to wait and talk to Emma calmly later. When I finally brought it up with her, she completely shut down and got defensive. She claimed I was taking her mom's side, and that I didn't understand what it was like to grow up with someone who was always in your business. She said some really hurtful things and ended up storming out. After that, she basically cut off her mom entirely, except for the absolute bare minimum communication for holidays or family events. Laura's heartbroken, and I'm angry. It's been a mess. Fast forward to now, Emma's getting married. She called me last week to ask if I could walk her down the aisle. But here's the thing, I don't feel right doing it when she's treating her mother like this. Laura's not even invited to the wedding. Emma said it would make things too uncomfortable if her mom were there. I told Emma that I can't walk her down the aisle if she's excluding her mom, who's done nothing but love and support her all her life. I said that until she makes things right with her mom, I won't be part of the wedding. Emma was furious. She accused me of choosing mom over her, said I was ruining her big day, and claimed I was punishing her for being honest about her feelings. She's now threatening to go no contact with both of us, and I'm torn up inside. I love my daughter, but I can't stand by and watch her treat her mother like this. Am I the a-hole for refusing to walk her down the aisle? I think you need to find out what happened between your daughter and her mom a year and a half ago. This didn't come out of nowhere. She met Tom's mom and is comparing them now. That could be a very likely possibility. Lord knows I knew my mother was awful. But it didn't hit me how awful until I got to know my mother-in-law. My God, I miss that woman. I have a severe skin disease and have to coat myself head to toe in moisturizer daily. It can be very expensive. My mom always acted like dealing with it was such a hassle and I was an inconvenience. We lived on the West Coast. Mother-in-law lived in the Midwest. This was before she met me and we had only talked on the phone. She went out and bought a box full of my moisturizer and put Winnie the Pooh stickers in every jar as she knew I loved Winnie the Pooh. I opened that box addressed to me, and that didn't have a single thing for her son. I saw all those jars and those stickers and just cried. It was one of the sweetest and most considerate things anyone had ever done for me. When I finally did meet her, she was picking us up from the airport. And she cried and just hugged and held on to me, saying how happy she was to finally get to see me and hug me. I felt more loved than I'd ever felt from my own mother. One of them sat next to me and asked me all about my hobbies and what I was working on, and asked about my dogs by name, and I realized my mother-in-law really talked about me to her friends, and that she thought very well of me. On that same visit, my husband was being a real pill to me one day and she absolutely gave him hell for it. Just writing this is making me get teary-eyed. I miss that woman so much. While it was awful having her die, I'm glad she never knew that her son and I divorced. I would have broken her heart. She and my sister-in-law often told me that if he and I didn't work out, they would choose me over him. I don't think that was true, as sister-in-law definitely didn't pick me even though her brother was a real POS. but I have no doubt that mother-in-law would still be in contact if she were alive. My mother doesn't even compare to her.
Final update. My parents tried to screw over my dying stepmother, blew up all of our lives instead. Original post. My 17 female stepmother Jane is a wonderful, wonderful woman. She and my father got married when I was 4, and she's been a rock in my life ever since. My mother was always my primary caregiver, but up until that point, her relationship with my father was acrimonious, and I basically never saw him. Jane was the reason they developed a stable co-parenting relationship. She encouraged everyone to have a good relationship with each other and was always there to support me and my mom when things got rough. Jane was always a really hard worker. When she met my dad, he was living out of a hotel, and my mother was doing everything in her power to keep me away from him because she was petty and angry that their relationship didn't work out. Meanwhile, Jane had a great job, a nice house, helped my dad get back on his feet, negotiated a visitation schedule with my mom, who hated her for a long time, and made sure my dad sent us money every week because neither of them could afford an attorney to negotiate child support payments. Jane had no reason to do any of these things, but as I got older, she made it clear that she loved me as much as she loved my half-brothers, who were born a few years later. I even have my own room in her house because, at a time, we lived with my grandparents and various boyfriends of my mom, and Jane felt that I needed a more stable environment than that. She's like the opposite of the evil stepmom. When I was 15, Jane won a big lawsuit against an airline company and was awarded upwards of $1 million. She used the money to build sizable trust funds for me and my brothers, so that we would be taken care of later in life. Despite having a lot more money, she still wanted to live a fairly modest life, so she paid off the house she has and has been living there ever since with my dad. Sure, she bought a new car and they went on a few nice vacations, but she didn't blow all her money on stupid things, which I respected. About a year ago, things started getting really weird. Whenever I saw Jane, she seemed to look sicker and sicker, but no one would tell me or my brothers why, even though I know they knew. All we knew is that she was at the hospital a lot. Around the same time, my mom started coming around my dad a lot more and acting really strange, basically like she was trying to romance him. Whenever Jane was in hospital, my mother would insist on spending the night at their house and playing mom to my brothers, which was so weird to me because she never liked them or Jane. She'd be the perfect little housewife, and my mom is not like that at all. It was super fake. Worst of all, my dad started falling for it. I'm not stupid. I'm pretty sure they were sleeping together. I tried to shield my brothers from it, but they're not dumb either. I tried talking to my dad too, but he insisted it wasn't like that. Then, a few weeks ago, my mom started talking about all the places she'd like to visit, how she wanted a new car and was looking to invest. Which was weird because my mom has been a bartender her whole life and has lived paycheck to paycheck since before I was born. She was acting like she was about to get a lot of money, which started to make me really suspicious. Between Jane being sick and my mom acting all nouveau-riche, I had a lot of questions. Finally, I decided to visit Jane in the hospital and ask her about my trust fund. I found out that if anything happened to her, my dad would inherit all the money, including full control of the trusts for me and my brothers. She asked me why I was so interested in the trust fund, so I told her what was going on with my parents and how my mom had been acting with my dad. I didn't want to, but after everything she did for me, she deserved the truth. It really hurt me to break her heart like that, especially once I found out that she was basically in hospice at this point because of irreversible kidney failure. She's only got a few more months. We both cried so much. Then 2 days ago, everything came to a head. My mom stormed in furious and started arguing with my dad. Apparently, Jane met with her lawyer and changed the trust so that my dad would get nothing, and all of the trusts would be controlled by my step-aunt. She demanded to know how Jane found out about their relationship, and I came out and told them that I told Jane everything. I told them that if they wanted to play stupid games, they would win stupid prizes. And that I wasn't going to let them screw Jane over after all the help she gave my family when she didn't have to. My mom slapped me, and my dad just looked so defeated. Then my mom told my dad that she didn't really love him, that she was just pretending so he would marry her and she could get all of the money. The worst part about it is that my brothers witnessed the whole thing. And now, on top of their mom dying, they have to deal with a cheating dad and his vindictive ex. Our whole family is in ruins, and I feel like it's my fault even though I know it's not. Yesterday, I visited Jane again and told her about the fallout. She apologized and said that she had to dissolve my trust fund to make sure my mother didn't get a hold of the money, but that as her oldest, I will inherit the house/property after she's gone, and that's worth more than the other 2 trust funds combined. My father won't get anything because she's going to divorce him before she dies, and honestly, I was happy for her. She made me promise to take care of my brothers and told me that once I turn 18 this summer, I can kick my dad out of the house if I want to. And I fully plan to do that, by the way. I haven't talked to my dad since, and I can't even look at my mom. I can't believe they would conspire to do this to Jane after all this time. Just proof that they deserve each other, and I'm embarrassed that they're my parents. Once I turn 18, I'm going to cut my dad out as much as I can and cut my mom out completely. I hope she rots. Meanwhile, I'm going to try and be at the hospital as much as I can until Jane passes away. Edit: some people are asking a lot of the same stuff, so I'll just clarify here. My brothers, my plan is to use some of the estate money to fight for guardianship of my twin brothers so that they can live in the house while I kick my dad out. The trust. Jane dissolved my third of the trust and switched it over to cover house maintenance, putting the house in my name so my dad wouldn't get it. My parents. The big fight happened on Sunday, and I haven't spoken to either of my parents since. Hope that clears some stuff up. Now for the top comments before reading the updates. I'm so sorry you're going through such a hard time, OP. The most important thing you've inherited from Jane is a strong moral compass. You could have taken the easy road and ignored everything your mom and dad were doing, but your compassion for Jane is proof you take after her the most. Thanks a lot. Yeah, when my mom was yelling at me, she asked why I couldn't keep my mouth shut and mind my business. And I told her, because Jane raised me better than that. And that's when she slapped me. I feel like she's always been threatened by Jane, and that was just proof. I'm so sorry, OP. Jane may not have given birth to you, but she's your mom through and through. I'm sorry she's dying, but I'm sure she's happy and relieved to know that even after she's gone, you'll have her back and keep an eye on her kids. Sending good thoughts your way. Thanks a lot. I really love my brothers, and I know it's my job to take care of them properly now that they won't have a mom around. Jane did so much to raise me, and my brothers won't have the opportunity, so it's only right that I help them. Now for the first update. Hi guys, it's me again. A lot of you asked for an update in my situation with Jane and my family, so I've come back with a few things that have happened since I initially posted. I will try to organize this in a way that addresses the major points from the last time. Jane is still alive and doing surprisingly well, considering the circumstances. She's always been a fighter, and although her disease has been progressing, she's keeping a positive attitude with everything that's going on. She says she's grateful that she was able to see everyone's true colors before she passed, so she could go into the next life knowing the truth. We have become so unbelievably close in the past few months, and it's getting harder and harder to know that she's getting close to the end. She doesn't ever talk about it though, and I know it's because she doesn't want to hurt me. But we both know the situation, so we're just making the best of our time. I'm also not being completely transparent about all of the drama at home, but to be honest, I don't think she needs to hear all of that. We did end up having that surprise celebration of life that I planned. A lot more people showed up than I thought, but they all got an Airbnb near the hospital where Jane is, and we were able to take her out and spend some time at the lake near the facility. It was super low-key, which I know Jane preferred, and I was even able to get her old college friend to come after I found him on LinkedIn. Lol. We had food, and there was music, and we played games. It was overall a really great time, except Jane started crying at the end, but she promised me it was just because she was grateful. My brothers are also doing okay. My aunt, Jane's sister, is currently paying for them to go to therapy, and they've become a lot more open about talking about the situation. They just turned 13, but a lot of time it feels like I'm talking to actual adults. Lol. They've become really independent lately, in a good way, and aside from me driving them places, I don't really have to do much for them anymore. Their grades aren't super great, but they're not failing, and considering the circumstances, it could be a lot worse. They still hang out with friends, and I'm keeping an eye out for depression symptoms and stuff. The situation with my mom is as funny as it is embarrassing, to be honest. She spent a few weeks ignoring us, and then she tried to crawl back into my life, basically begging me to let her move in because her lease is about to expire and she has nowhere to go. That convo went about as well as you'd think, and she ended up calling me an ungrateful bee and saying that I couldn't just ignore her because she's my mom. I told her to get out of the house before I called the cops and to go back to my dad, who at that point was only coming home every few days to check on us and grab some clothes. After that, she tried coming by a few times, and when I wouldn't open the door, she would lose her mind and start yelling through the neighborhood. After 3 instances of this, I finally called the cops, but because I'm 17, they told me there's a possibility that I would have to go home with her, since technically I'm a minor and need to be with a custodial parent. I told them no way, because I was the only one watching my brothers at the moment. That led to a whole thing where, after a few hours, my dad basically showed up, and I was allowed to stay there because there was finally an adult present, and I'd basically lived there for over a year. After that, the cops firmly told my mom that if she keeps showing up and causing drama, my neighbors confirmed that she'd been there a few times screaming. They would arrest her for trespassing, since technically it was Jane's house and not hers. She left and hasn't tried coming to the house anymore, but for a while, she would call me constantly, telling me I owed her and all kinds of stuff. She's now blocked and everything, and anything she needs to say to me gets filtered through my dad. As for my dad, well, since he's basically required to be here for another 2 months until I turn 18, we've basically just avoided each other. It's not too bad though, because I've been heavily relying on guilting him for everything to get my way. For example, he was going to contest the divorce, but I threatened to kick him out when I turned 18 if he did that. So he just signed all the paperwork for a quickie divorce and is basically doing whatever Jane tells him to do. I don't openly disrespect him or anything, he's still my dad, but I've made it clear that I have no intentions of doing anything he says ever again, and he doesn't fight me on it. Most of the time, he's just in his room, and sometimes he'll go back to my mom's, but only for a day or 2 before they argue and she kicks him out again. Lol. I haven't decided whether or not I'll kick him out yet, and we haven't talked about it either, so I'm kind of playing it by ear. As for me, I'm handling everything as best as I can. I found a new job where I make a little more money, so I've been focusing on saving as much as I can and just being there for my brothers. Between working, school, and visiting Jane, I've been so busy I haven't really had time to stop and think about everything, but I know it'll come. One of my friends has really stepped up and helped me manage everything, and I'm super grateful to him for being there for me and my brothers, so we'll see how that goes. Anyways, I wish I had something more exciting to share, but that's what's happened since my last post. Thanks again for all the support in my last post. I remember your first post. That is such a big pile of horse crap to be dealing with, but you sound so incredibly mature and like you're really taking it in stride. Your parents have really failed you and your brothers here, but I'm so proud of how you've managed to step up to the plate and hold your ground against them. I'm still sorry you have to be the next best adult in this scenario. It's also great to hear that Jane is still alive and that you guys got to do a celebration of life with her. I can only hope that, when I am at my own end, I have people who love me this dearly and this deeply. I hope you and your loved ones are able to make some more happy memories with her. Thank you, and I promise that as long as you are a good person and work to make the lives of those around you better instead of being a burden, you will have many people around you who will love and cherish you. Jane was a wonderful example for you and raised you well. I'm so sorry you have to deal with all of this. You are so young, and this should be a carefree time in your life. However, I'm glad your brothers have you. Curious, does your dad and bio mom work at all? Or do they just mooch off Jane and others? I mean, it seems like they have a lot of time on their hands to do nothing but be horrible people. Yes, my bio mom works as a bartender most nights. She's been working at the same bar basically my whole life. As for my dad, he works in industrial sales. He makes a pretty decent living, but I think most of his money recently has been going toward my bio mom, since he never seems to have money to do anything anymore, lol. Second update. Hello everyone, it's me again. I've gotten quite a few messages in the last months asking for an update, so I'm going to post my final update here and hope that's enough to answer the questions everyone has been asking. I'm sorry that it took so long to update, but a lot has been going on. As many of you may already assume, Jane passed away early this fall. It was very traumatic and sudden, but the silver lining is that she exceeded every doctor's expectation for her life. And when she did go, she was surrounded by family, including me, my brothers, and my dad. She was on palliative care and felt no pain except for a brief moment right at the end, and we are all very grateful for that. Towards the end, Jane was physically pretty much done, but her mind was as sharp as ever. I took the advice of many of you here and recorded some voice notes for my brothers. I originally wanted to do video, but by the time we were able to do it, we both decided they didn't need to remember her wrapped in tubes and in a hospital gown. She also wrote many letters for her friends, family, and even for me to open when I reached certain milestones. She gave me one to open right after she passed away. And while I won't share too many details, I can say with absolute certainty that she is and forever will be who I consider my mother without question. It was very, very emotional for everyone. And although it has been a few months, I am still very heartbroken about her no longer being with us. She was a kind, gentle woman, and in my heart, she is who I aspire to be. My brothers are obviously very hurt about our mom dying, but just like before, they're taking it surprisingly well. They're still going to therapy both together and separately, and we have a lot of conversations whenever they feel like talking. We've always been close, but I feel like we're closer now. Even though I work, we hang out as often as we can, and I'm doing everything I can to be the support that they need. They don't know it, but I definitely need them as much as they need me, because they're the only ones I can really talk to about anything. Ironically, now that our family glue is gone, we're pulling together stronger than before. My dad and I mended fences, so to speak. We went to a few therapy sessions together where he took full responsibility for his behavior, and I've forgiven him as much as I can, especially since he eventually started doing everything he could to be there for Jane at the end, even though they still went through with a divorce. He's still living with us and things are a little tense, but they're much better than before. He's my dad, and I love him, but he was also broken by Jane's condition, and he wasn't able to cope in a healthy manner. Her dying really brought some light into his eyes, so to speak, and now he's really stepping up to be the man he was supposed to be. A lot of people might comment saying too little too late, but again, he's my dad, and for my own mental health, I have chosen to forgive him. As far as I know, my bio mom pretty much vanished off the face of the earth when I turned 18. She tried a few times to convince me to let her live with us, but I wasn't having any of it. Even my dad told her he's officially done, and after we all blocked her on everything, she stopped reaching out. She doesn't have any relatives to talk to her, so I don't have to worry about that. But I did hear from people who follow her on Facebook that she has a new boyfriend that she's living with. I don't want to stalk her or anything. I really don't care. She hasn't come to me with any kind of apology, so to be honest, she can get bent. It's a little hard for me to think that she just walked away the second I turned legal, just because she didn't get any of Jane's money. But oh well, true colors and all that. Guess 18 years was too long to pretend to care. I'm just so angry with her, I don't want anything to do with her anymore. Maybe that will change one day, but I'm not holding my breath. As for me, I'm doing pretty okay. I decided to take a year before I start college to handle all of this BS, and I'm still at my same job, so I'm saving up money wherever I can. My friends have all been great supporters, and I'm so grateful for everyone, especially you Reddit folks, who have been checking in on me and making sure I'm okay. I'm taking things one day at a time, and that's been working great to keep me focused. My goal is to go to college next year and study journalism, but I'm playing it by ear. I can always go back to school, but right now my family needs me, and if that takes longer than a year, then so be it. Thank you everyone. This will be my last update, and I very much appreciate all the love and support you've shown our family. Jane, I know, was very grateful for all of you too. And all I can say is, hold your loved ones tight and be careful of anyone who seems too good to be true. Much love and blessings to you all. Your dad still sucks. I went back and read Opie's past posts. All I have to say is that Opie's dad is just as bad as Bio Mom, my opinion. But yeah, a few therapy sessions definitely fixed him. I understand why you would feel this way, but the therapy is ongoing. He's actually insisting on it, and he's going to individual therapy as well. We all are. The goal isn't to fix him as much as it is to help us all cope with each other and what happened. I think Jane dying broke us all in a way that won't ever be fixed. Who has control over the money Jane left for her children? Does your father have access to it? Is it possible that his attitude only changed because he's expected to gain access to the money Jane left? He might still be secretly involved with your biological mom and only pretending to change his behavior as a way to get closer to Jane's money. For a while, I did honestly think this. However, shortly after Jane died, I found out he was looking into apartments to move into. When I confronted him about it, he said that he was trying to be respectful and assumed I wouldn't want to have anything to do with him, so he was preparing just in case. I think the fact that he wasn't parading his plan around in front of me to try and get brownie points says a lot, along with the fact that he's been very involved in our therapy. That gives me a lot of hope. I understand a lot of people have bad experiences, but like I've been saying, my dad isn't a bad person. He's just stupid. Last story. I was sent a DNA test because my mom and sister got into a disagreement. My Christmas gift this year was a DNA test kit my mom sent me after my little sister let me know our dad might not be my real dad. This was after my mom and sister got into a major disagreement, so my sister threw me in the middle of their fight. All I can say is mad respect to my dad, whether he is biologically mine or not. I never would have even guessed this was a possibility. He's never treated me differently, and if anything, he's been my rock. I also found out my sister had been making stories up about me and telling everyone my personal struggles and battles all these years, which resulted in a lot of family members ignoring me and isolating me and my two kids. My dad, again not sure if he's biological or not yet, and my older brother are the only ones who never turned their backs on us. I never understood why my kids and I were not invited to family holidays, etc. any more years ago. It made me sad, but I just accepted it. On top of this news, I was also recently diagnosed with psoriatic arthritis mutilans, which is a rare and severe type of PSA. The condition ultimately causes bone loss in the affected joints, which can make it impossible to bend or straighten them. I haven't told my family yet, but it's just one more personal battle I'm ready to take on, and that's okay. I have a long, extensive background of medical issues but haven't given up yet. So, with the DNA test kit, my mom wants me to take it so she can basically throw it in my sister's face if it comes back saying my dad is my biological dad. But she said she doesn't know what she will feel if it comes back saying he isn't. Meanwhile, my sister has been trying to convince my dad to kick my two kids and me out of his apartment, especially if he's not my bio dad, which my dad, bio or not, said he wasn't going to do. I've been working, trying to save money and get a place for my kids and me, so I'm trying either way. I just feel lost, confused, and alone. And I'm open to any advice or suggestions to help during this time, now that my family circle just got even smaller because I can't trust anyone at the moment. Apparently, it doesn't matter to your dad if you're his biological child. He loves you regardless. Why do anything for a family that rejects you? You love your dad and he loves you. Tell them you haven't been part of their family since they rejected you. Keep in touch with your dad and brother. Tell him what's happening and cut the rest off. I have cut contact with my sister. However, my sister ended up cutting contact with my mom. Like my sister and me, my mom and I have also had issues in the past seeing eye to eye. It always felt like my mom and sister teamed up against me. My mom also would baby my older brother and favor my two siblings. So now that my sister is no contact with mom, and my brother went no contact with mom as well, I'm the only one talking to my mom. It's kinda sad because, for the first time ever, my mom actually talks to me more than she ever has. I've literally spent years longing for a mom-daughter bond like my sister and her had. I love my sister, and even if she gave me devastating news and I have to love her from a distance, I still hope she is always okay and her family's happy. So, with that being said, it's hard to go no contact with my mom because she finally answers my phone calls instead of ignoring me, and she has been listening to me and telling me about her life, etc. Even though it's probably not the healthiest thing, because my mom also ends up steering conversations, talking about my sister and how upset she is that she isn't talking to her. The days when I'm noticed and my mom spends a little more time talking to me, I like those times. Sounds lame, I'm sure, but I feel conflicted with that part.
Update. My mom, 60 female, is still pressuring me, 25 female, to add me as a third person on her new $820,000 mortgage. I really don't want to, as my husband and I are looking to buy our own home. She states doing this will build my credit for a new mortgage down the line. Original post. My 25 female mother, 60 female, and her boyfriend, 60 male, had a house in Ottawa, which was a nice home. She's always hated a home for reasons I think could have easily been renovated, like new shower tiles, new doors, or adding basic finishes to the basement. It was a new build at a time, 2017. I, as well as the mortgage advisor, advised against it, given that the new home she wanted went for $820,000 and she still had quite a lot left on her mortgage. In the end, the bank pre-approved her and her boyfriend for $500,000 with the knowledge that the rest of the fees will be covered using the profit from her old home. Fast forward to now, she keeps asking me to come on as a third person. Given that with my good job and with a salary of over $65,000, the pre-approval amount will be higher. The issue is, I am now married, and my husband and I are also saving up to buy a home in the next few years. She dismissed it and said doing this with her will build my credit. And when I'm ready to buy a home, the bank will approve me and she will definitely co-sign with us. Is this a thing? Because she went and told her mortgage advisor that I'm interested, but I don't think she gave her the details. Not only that, I'm pregnant and will be going on maternity leave, which means that it's not the time to think about things like this, because I will technically be on employment insurance, which is exactly why my husband and I are waiting until I get back to work, and he gains more seniority in his work. I'm at a loss in what to do because my mom has screwed me over for small amounts of money, so that alone I don't trust her. But it's the fact she's already telling the mortgage advisor I want in, and she's disregarding the fact that I'm married with her own grandkid on the way. However, she did state doing this will build my credit, and it will be easier to qualify for a new mortgage down the line with my husband. Now for the top advice before reading the update. No, the bank will see you as having a massive liability. This will make it much harder, as in the eyes of the bank, you will already be on the hook for a mortgage. You'd also lose your first-time home buyer's land transfer tax rebate too. Parents of my friends tried to do that with their son at 18, buy a house in his name essentially to save the tax. Luckily, he knew about it and said, hell no. Who the heck are those pathetic excuses for a parent? How freaking low must you be to feel okay about screwing over your own child? They rationalize it somehow. People are very good at that. The mortgage you are on will have to be included in your debt ratios when applying for your own mortgage. Having an existing mortgage included in your debts will make it very, very difficult to obtain your own mortgage. Absolutely do not do this. It will make it harder for you to get a mortgage later, as it will be considered your debt. You will be responsible for the mortgage if she doesn't pay it. When you go to get your own mortgage, her co-signing will be useless because she will also already have a mortgage which will be considered. She needs to buy something within her means. If she is relying on your income to be approved for a higher amount, it is not within her means. And now for the update. Last week, I posted what my mother was trying to do, which was have me co-sign her mortgage. Many people have asked for an update. So yesterday, I spoke with a mortgage advisor who not only admitted that my mom was a difficult client, as she was trying to do the impossible by getting this mortgage, but he also revealed that the reason she needed me to co-sign a mortgage was because she did not want to listen to his recommendation, which was to return the car she had leased, on which the maturity date is almost due, and to not finance a new car until she gets her mortgage funded, 2 months max. This is to ensure she does not have too much debt, and that her pre-approval amount stay the same. Instead of doing that, She wanted me on a mortgage so she can increase the funding approval rate and get a new car financed. My husband and I were disgusted and shocked. The mortgage advisor was very honest and stated that if I get in on this, it will significantly reduce my borrowing power and I will be on the hook for years. He even joked and asked, "Would you like to stay stuck renting with the inability to borrow and a huge dip on your credit while she drives the newest fancy cars and lives in a big home?" He told us not to do it and think of our future. We're expecting a baby in the fall. To cut it short, most of you are right. She had no intention of helping me in the long run, and it was only to satisfy her wants, while having no issues leaving my husband and baby and I on the hook for almost $1 million. I have confronted my mom, who has yet to answer my texts, and my husband has adjusted that we cut contact with her. I wanted to take the time to thank you all for your honest advice, and to the mortgage advisor who put reality before money. She states doing this will build my credit for a new mortgage down the line. Big lol. This is advice to give teenagers getting their first student credit cards. Absolutely. This would destroy Opie's credit. Opie would have no chance of getting a mortgage in a few years with $800,000 of debt to their name, and all those first-time home buyers' perks would be gone. But Opie's mom would get a new car. Opie, on a serious note, your mom should look out the buyout cost for her leased vehicle versus the resale value. The used car market is crazy right now, and most people can pay X dollars to buy out their lease, then drive the car over to the used car lot and sell it for X plus $5,000 or whatever. That's free money basically, so I highly recommend you look into it. I'm not sure which scenario is worse, that your mother believes this or that she thinks you're stupid enough to buy it. 1. You do not need a mortgage to build credit. Just a credit card that you never use. Paying down would suffice. 2. If you are added on the mortgage/title, you, plus husband if purchasing together, will lose your first-time home buyer credit. 3. Just say no. Refuse to sign any documents. Yes, the mortgage advisor spoke to me about a first-time home buyer plan and how I would lose it if I co-signed this. I knew about this and told my mom. She dismissed it and said who cares because my husband would qualify. True, but really? I recall this post and commend you for making this difficult, but not so difficult decision. As a mother-to-be, you've absolutely made the right choice for your family, and like what your own mother was doing for her child. My answer isn't financial, but is this a pattern of behavior for her? Has she always tried to harm you for her own benefit and tried to guilt trip or manipulate you or others to get what she wants? If so, your husband is onto something with the suggestion of cutting contact with her or at least severely limiting it. She will likely continue to harass, shame and guilt you, telling you how you robbed her of her house. You don't need that now with a baby on the way. When I was younger, 21, I got the opportunity to move to the UK after finishing school. It was all against her wishes as she wanted me to stay in Canada for no good reason. I was living with her and forced to pay $1,000 in rent, plus utilities for living in her unfinished basement. When I told her I wanted to save and asked her to reduce the rent or give me startup money, she blamed me for being bad with money. At the time, I only made about $1,600 a month. Nevertheless, I rebelled, saved my money, got a second job, got the visa, and moved to the UK, which is actually where I met my now husband. When I was there, I was thriving in my own way, a job, apartment, friends, etc. Then about a year later, she would send me WhatsApp messages telling me she's extremely sick and had issues with her nerve muscles which was preventing her to move. She would call me sad and crying. A few months later, I went back only to see she was perfectly healthy and has never been better. She would then ask for money, get me to stay with her, and it's all a blur. But I gave up the apartment, paid what was left of the rent, and ended up staying in Canada, stagnant and paying her $1,000 plus utilities to stay with her. The only good thing that came from this was that I met my husband. We're now here, and he seems to catch on much quicker to my mom's manipulative tactics. Last story is titled, Update. Am I the a-hole for being upset that my siblings are getting my part of an inheritance but I'm not because I'm a recovering addict? Original post. My parents are pretty wealthy. I'm 26, and from 21 to 25 I was in and out of rehabs. I was abusing so many different kinds of substances, and I wasted so much money. I owed it once, and it destroyed my family to watch me go through that. I am intensely ashamed of who I was as a person, and I have been sober for almost a year. My parents are now approaching their late 60s and have started finalizing their wills and inheritance. Yesterday, they sat me down and told me that I will not be getting any of the inheritance, as they don't trust me not to relapse with all that money suddenly in my possession. And as a result, my siblings will be getting my share of the money. I was pretty upset about this, and I said that they were going to make my siblings rich, while I would get nothing from it, and that wasn't fair. I was almost yelling at this point. They told me to calm down, but I was too upset to listen, and I left. I called my brother and sister after I left and told them what my parents said, and they said that it was their choice and there wasn't anything they could do. I accused them of just wanting all the money for themselves and not caring about what happened to me. Today, I have my dad texting me that they are worried about me and disappointed in my behavior yesterday. I talked to my sponsor and he said that while anger is understandable, I have to do everything in my power not to ruin the trust I've built with my family over the past year, and acting like an a-hole addict won't help. Sometimes I still have trouble with my reactions to things now that I'm sober. However, I don't feel as though I'm entirely unjustified here. Am I the a-hole for getting upset? Now for the top comments before reading the update. You're the a-hole because you probably spent your share of the inheritance every time they tried to help you. Seriously? Add up every dollar they've spent on your addiction, or ask them to add it up, and then ask yourself if you deserve any more. Don't forget all the time and emotional labor that goes with all this. How many days off or vacations got sidelined? How many sleepless nights? Emotional/relationship damage caused by things said or done while OP was under the influence. OP, you took up way more than your fair share, and way more than the inheritance is even worth. That's a fair point. As a PS, if you stay sober, your parents will treat you more responsibly over time. 1 year's nothing in recovery. Maybe several years or more down the line, when you're living a respectable life and they see that their money will go into your house, education, or something else which you have built between now and then, they will reconsider. I think timing is a major factor here. It feels like forever. You're the a-hole. Your parents are concerned for your life. Also, your parents are only 60-ish, thus there is a good chance that they will be alive for at least 10 years. I believe USA life expectancy is north of 70. That leaves plenty of time to amend a will. You are only a year out of rehab, so your parents are just making plans for the way things are today. Edit. Just reread that as late 60s, but the point still remains. They have to plan based on today, not based on what could be 10 years from now. But the way things are now won't always be the case. First, congrats on nearly a year. That being said, you spent nearly 1/5 of your life in rehab. I wouldn't blame them for not trusting you yet, especially since I bet you were using before the rehab. I'm guessing your parents paid for that? Not to mention all the attention that had to be put on you. That could have gone to your siblings. Addicts are an Olympic-sized pool's drain on a family's mental health and finances. They worried about you, made sure you were getting help, paid for it, and you repay them by going ballistic about that they won't treat you as if you did nothing to them? Yeah, they did pay for it. And now for the update. My first post wasn't hugely popular, but I wanted to update anyways. After what happened with my parents, I won't lie, I relapsed. I had a weekend where I blacked out. I remember getting back to my apartment and all the drugs and booze I had bought was gone. And it was a Monday morning. It was a lot of stuff. I scared myself so much I ended up calling my parents saying that they were right. And I remembered everyone's advice on my last post and I apologized for how I treated them. And that they were right in not giving me any of their money. I'm now 3 weeks sober and I took Reddit's advice and made a compromise with my parents in regards to my inheritance. If I remain at least 5 years sober and submit to a bi-monthly drug test, they will reconsider my part of the money. I hope they do reconsider. I know I have a lot of work to do and I still have a lot of selfishness to overcome. But I wanted to thank everyone for helping me try to realize that. Here's to 3 weeks and more. You're 3 weeks sober. You relapsed in the past and will likely again. It's pretty normal and expected to fall back. And when you enter group therapy and MAT therapy, they will talk about this with you. You can't and won't beat this alone. You need help. And it's okay to ask for it and use the services available to you. Millions of Americans have substance problems, and it's more common than you think. But there is only one legit solution. You can't expect your family to trust you after 3 weeks. You can't expect them to trust you ever again. It's fully up to them when they will bring that trust back, and you can't do anything about that. Get help. Join the addiction thread. Talk to an addiction doctor and get the ball rolling. They will help you with the withdrawal, family issues, and mental issues caused by the abuse. But most importantly, they will get to the core of your addiction so it can be properly addressed. 5 minutes after I took my first dose of buprenorphine, Subsolve, I never had another craving again. The withdrawal issues washed away, and when I fully gave myself to the program, fully stopped self-diagnosing myself and let the professional doctor do what they are trained in, soon I was honest to them and me. The process became insanely easy. When you fight it, when you try to justify it, when you lie to your doctor or think you know your body best, then you fail. Your parents owe you nothing. It seems like they already saved your life once and spent a lot of money doing it. Make your own money. Not everyone has rich parents. You should just appreciate their unconditional love. They worked hard their whole lives for their money. You were not entitled to it, even if you were sober. Also, be sober for you, not for money. Abso-freaking-lutely couldn't agree more. Being sober for money will kill you when the money comes. Addiction might take a break while you're sober, but it will pick up where it left off and can oftentimes pick up steam for lost ground if it gets traction. A sudden influx of money is almost always a destructive force if your foundation for sobriety is built on anything but a solid cornerstone. You more or less prove their point. At a first hurdle, you immediately used again. If they give you a penny more, you'll just relapse. Way to completely miss the emotional impact of your parents saying they have no faith in you. They could have put the money in a trust and made it accessible in small amounts, conditional on verified and continuing sobriety. They could have not given anything, but cited the fact Opie had already spent his share of the inheritance and all the rehab and care during their bad years. But no, they basically just told him they don't think he'll amount to anything ever again. I'd probably relapse too. Not that I expect better from this sub. The last thread was a judgmental garbage fire, and I'm sure this one will be too. Huge amounts of people just straight up telling Opie is guaranteed to relapse again and is a piece of crap for doing so. That'll sure help him move forward. It's one thing to tell someone to adjust expectations and prepare for a struggle to maintain sobriety. It's quite another for hundreds of people to crapple over the vulnerable person at their lowest point. Nice job, everyone. Hope the self-righteous high was worth it. Update. Am I the a-hole for not giving in to my brother's tantrums? Original story. I, female 29, recently bought a house and a brand new car. I will admit I probably splurged on my house more than I should. But growing up very poor, it has been always a dream of mine to live in a nice house. I worked really hard to be where I am. So much so that I undergo countless breakups because I always choose career over boys. My brother, male 25, is currently jobless. He works as a tourist guide before and can barely make ends meet. He has 5 kids now, and counting, as his wife announced pregnancy recently. He messaged me on Facebook that there is something he wants to talk about, and I thought he wants to name me godmother to his incoming baby. I said sure, and invited him to the house to get his approval about some things I modified for our parents. I gave him a tour and he admired my house greatly, saying things like how excited he is to bring the kids to my house. I do not mind anything about it, as I thought he meant a visit, which I'm more than happy to host them for. Imagine my surprise when he finally sat me down and finally revealed what he wants to talk about. He wants me to give him my house. I clarified whether he meant this house or the other house I bought for my parents which I still lived in. Still has modifications ongoing with my dream house. He said the house is big enough for his family and I can go visit them anytime I like. He even offered that if I really wanted to live there, I can go move into the maid's room and modify it for my personal use. I was shocked, I cannot speak, as he thanked me over and over for the house. I finally asked him where the heck did the idea come from, and he said our mother told him I will give him my house. I of course corrected that, and this is where things gone south. My brother repeatedly said since our mom said the house is his now, I I could not do anything but give in. I called my mother to tell him to buzz off, and lo and behold, my mother sided with my brother. To make this already long story short, my whole family had cut me off, and parents disowned me until I gave my brother my house. My father has been brought to the hospital over this fight, and now I feel really bad. The guy I'm seeing now said to just give the house to my brother, and he'll help me to buy another. Reddit. Am I the a-hole here? Edit. To clarify, the house that they gave away is the newly bought one. One I thought where I could raise 5 adorable fur babies. Family home is in my name too, as I have to take out a loan back then to buy it. So yeah, it may be obvious I'm not the a-hole at first sight, but I feel like I could be one because my father got hospitalized over the ensuing fight for the house. Now for the top comments before I read the updates. Not the a-hole of course, but what the actual hell is going on here? The entitlement of your brother to expect that you will give him your house? And the nerve of your parents expecting that you would indeed do this? Actually, if your parents want to provide for your brother, they can invite him to live in the house you've bought for them. And they can live in the maid's room. Your family's toxic, Opie. And if that's how they see you, as a bank, then cutting you off is a good thing for you. I'd kick everyone but the dad out of the homes Opie owns. Both of them. I'd lock it down with a lawyer for safety. Cameras. All of it. This sub is way too familiar with some insane people. Is this a joke? One of the clearest not the a-hole I've ever seen. You already gave your parents one house, and they took it upon themselves to give your home away as well? Haha, thanks. I feel really awful though. As I mentioned, my father has been brought to the hospital over this. I feel really guilty because if I had not fought my brother and mother, he would have been probably fine. He thinks I should give my brother my house, as he thinks I can afford to buy another in a few years. He has a point, so it eats me up. Not the a-hole. And you should sell the other house in your name since they have disowned you, and take it to go on an amazing holiday. How horrible. This comment made me laugh. This is the same suggestion as my boss, who also happens to be my best friend. She said I should use the money to treat myself on a nice holiday in Europe as I had always wanted. Update. I'm trying to read all comments and I'm just so overwhelmed for your support. I'm temporarily staying at a friend's house ever since. Your encouraging words really helped ease my mood. I finally decided not to give this house and sell the other one to help pay for a vast majority of the loan in my dream house. I also decided to remove my parents' access to my health plans and remove them in my insurance. Last but not least, thank you for the award, kind strangers. Reading your comments made me realize how ridiculously unreal this sounds. And now for the update 8 months later. Hello. So, a lot of people have reached out to me since my original post. A lot has happened then, and I'll try to include much details as I can. So, I cut my family off back in December and removed them in all services that will benefit them being connected to me. Since I figured, hey mom, you told me I'm dead to you, then you get no free house for me anymore. So the reactions from our extended family were just as expected. Most of the adults sided with my mother, but my cousins expressed their support to me. I got uninvited with the family reunion I initially sponsored, and isn't that just the worst? My aunts and uncle had barricaded the gates when I arrived at my granny's house. I won't expand on this anymore because it still hurts until now. My mother also sued me for selling the first house back in January. It did not reach the higher courts and I won. Public perception of me got worse though. She and my brother took this defeat to twist the sympathy in their favor. They posted on social media about how I am an ungrateful daughter and that I owe them for everything I have. They also blamed me for my father's death. Yes, he died. I did not even get to attend a funeral because I'm banned. When this happened, I almost gave in and signed the papers to give the house to my brother. I blamed myself and believed them that my selfishness killed my father. At this point, my boyfriend convinced me to take a break from work and talk to a professional. I did just that, and I'm only now just realizing how messed up the way they raised me. Can't believe it took internet strangers to realize something is wrong with how they treated me. To be honest, I almost decided not to post an update. It was last month when my therapist suggested I should do it, because this is where me breaking off from them started. On the bright side, I saw how my fiancé's family really liked me because of this ordeal. I thought they were just being nice. But stuff happened and they supported me every step of the way, especially when my partner had to go overseas for a 1-week stay because of his job. They really took care of me, and even assured me I'm worth more than my family thinks I am. The nicest thing I've ever heard in my life came from his mother. Anyway, last July 21, my father's birthday, Mother reached out to me. She explained to me that she understood she had no rights banning me from his funeral, but at the time all she can think about is how I cut them off my health plans, and it rendered them incapable of supporting my father's hospitalization. I did not realize this, and we cried for hours. She said she still blames me though, and doesn't think she can forgive me. I think I understand her. My therapist told me that thinking of what-ifs is counterproductive, but still, if I could go back in time, I'll help them with this. My brother won't talk to me. That's fine. The feeling is very much mutual. I believe in natural consequences. You cutting your parents and family off financially after being manipulated and mistreated is a natural consequence. Your mom can blame you all day long, but her actions are what got the ball rolling. You are amazing and strong for working so hard to move past this. This is why people say fate does have a sense of irony. Opie was willing to give almost everything to her family but wanted one thing for herself. Opie's family wouldn't allow that, so they lose everything else of Opie's that they'd already had, and had lots of consequences as a result. Their greed and selfishness actually killed him. Sucks to suck. That Opie is still being manipulated by these people is insane. Opie, you need to keep that no contact up. Your mom showed right away she hasn't learned anything, changed, nor does she see you as a human being. Just a thing that provides stuff for her. She said she still blames me though and doesn't think she can forgive me. I blame her. Maybe do not disowned person paying for your health care? Your mother could have told you, but instead did a smear campaign against you. Bite the hand that feeds. Now for the next story. Am I the a-hole for my reaction when my husband asked about dinner after I gave him the news of my mother's death? I lost my mom days ago to cancer. I had a good relationship with her and my sisters. I took part of her care and my husband helped a lot in the past few months. He loved mom, or so I thought. He helped me take care of her home. He'd visit daily when I stayed with her and he cleaned her yard, walked her dogs, handled her financial issues. He's an accountant. Brought her stuff she needed before she went to the hospital. I never complained about the efforts he made or time it took to help her out. I received the news of her passing from my sister at 6 p.m. My husband got home within 30 minutes. He was resting on a couch in the living room when I came downstairs and my face was very telling, but he didn't notice somehow. He casually talked about how long and hard his day was and didn't notice that I didn't say a word. I spoke up and told him my mother just passed. He asked when and I told him about an hour ago. He leaned back and stared at me for a long minute, then said, "So what's for dinner?" I froze in my place. I just looked at him and said, "What? You don't need me to take you to the hospital? We gotta eat first." I blew up at him and called him unbelievable for his response to the news of my mom's death. He argued back talking about how he was working non-stop all day without having time to eat anything. Then basically talked about all the things he's done for mom and how he owes nobody nothing. He said he was sorry for needing to eat after coming home hungry after working for hours, and said that my reaction to lashing out was misplaced and unfair. I stormed off upstairs and got ready to go meet my sister. He wanted me to wait till he ate something, but I refused to speak and left. I stayed with my sister after the funeral. He came to try to talk to me, but I felt I wasn't ready. My sister was confused, saying no matter what his response was to the news, my husband doesn't deserve this treatment from me after he helped out, and I should just try to work it out with him, but I told her to stay out of it. Not the a-hole. The first thing he said wasn't even, "I'm sorry" or "Are you alright?" It was to ask you what you were going to make him for dinner, an hour after you learned your mother died. He didn't even acknowledge her passing at all before he asked you for food. And then he didn't even apologize for it. He gave you non-apologies and told you why you shouldn't be angry at him and how unfair it was. All while still never offering the bare minimum level of condolences for you losing your mother. I'm so curious about the long pause. He was thinking about what to say. It wasn't a knee-jerk comment, which is what he was implying. He also doubled down on blaming her. And hello, he can't make himself a sandwich? I get the impression that he was thinking that Opie could go back to being his maid now that her mom was dead. Cold? Yes, but I can't think of anything else. He made a decision to offend her. He thought about what he was saying. Not the a-hole. For me, it's definitely that he doubled down on it too. I can give people a pass for saying the wrong thing if they acknowledge they said the wrong thing and apologize, but he did not do that. Wow, not a-hole. He's a grown adult. He can make himself a damn sandwich. I can't even imagine my husband reacting like that if my mother died. Not the a-hole. That is a sentence one would never expect to hear after telling someone, much less their own partner, that their loved one has passed. I am speechless. What's for dinner? Is he always this unsupportive and indifferent towards you and your feelings? Dear God. You have every right to be outright shocked by your husband's response to such tragic news, and don't let anyone tell you otherwise. I'm so sorry for your loss, and for you having gotten so little support from the person who should have been supporting you the most at the time of your sorrow. I don't know what made him act like that. Yes, he would usually complain about being overwhelmed. I always try to listen to what bothers him. I'd expect him to at least listen to me and comfort me while going through these rough times. My sister said that maybe he expected my mom to pass away, so the news wasn't surprising to him. But still, I'm honestly shocked. I'm not gonna lie. I'm mad. Last story is titled, Am I the a-hole for not wanting to hold my newborn nephew? My sister is mad at me, 21 male, for this. Want to give some quick info first. 2 years ago, my girlfriend and I had a baby girl, but she was born premature, and she was so small. I only got to hold her once before she passed. It was really, really hard. I loved her so much. But now that it's been a while, I didn't think these feelings would come up when my sister announced she was pregnant. We were all happy for her, including me, and thought it was cool to become an uncle. She gave birth and my nephew is a month old. We came over for the first time to her house last weekend, and everyone wanted to hold him. My mom was by me when my sister handed her the baby, and I don't know, but me seeing him moving around making noises, it took me back to thinking about my baby girl. I haven't been close to another baby since my daughter. This would be my second time ever holding a baby and it wasn't my daughter. And in my head I'm thinking, I can't do this. My mom asked if I want to hold him. Told her it's okay, she can keep holding him. And my mom nodded to me like she understood. But my sister joked that her son doesn't bite. So what's the problem? I told her no problem, just didn't feel right. We went on like nothing. My dad held him for a bit and everyone was talking. Again, my sister brings up how come I don't want to hold her son. Do I have a problem with him? I told her no, it's not like that. It's just hitting me right now and I don't know if I feel right holding him. It's bringing up some hard feelings remembering my daughter is what I told her. My sister didn't say anything else, but she was quite mad. We left hours later, then she called me to tell me what she really feels. She can't believe I tried to make it about me during a time when it was meant to be a happy first meeting, and that I'm an A for not wanting to hold my nephew. Because it's like I'm rejecting him and taking it out on him that I don't have a daughter anymore. It wasn't like that, and I tried to tell her it was gonna be heavy for me to hold him, so I didn't think I would be able to handle. She still thinks I was really crappy and she wants a real apology. My girlfriend says screw her. I want to agree. But I don't know if that's the defensive part of me that doesn't think I did anything wrong. Was I an a-hole for how I reacted? Not an a-hole. And holy cow, your sister needs a reality check. She's clearly never had to grieve anything as serious as the loss of a child. It didn't have to become about you, but she kept pushing. Also, she's taking your very real and raw grief and trying to make it about her. Who cares if you hold a baby or not? I don't know about other moms, but I'd be grateful for my baby not being passed to everyone, especially in the middle of a pandemic. Seriously, I was talking to my partner about this the other day. I told them that if we had children together, I was uncomfortable with other people outside of ourselves kissing or holding for the first month at least. After that, holding would be fine, but I still probably would be uncomfortable about kisses for the first 2 years. This would be my first kid, so I'm probably being a little overprotective. But I've seen so many die at a young age because someone had what they thought was a minor illness and decided to kiss a child anyways. 100%. My nephew ended up in the hospital because my mother-in-law kissed him while she had a cold sore. He was 3. She kissed my 3-year-old the other day, and I almost lost it. Not a a-hole, but I'd also not hold it against your sister just yet. She's a new mom who's dealing with both lack of sleep and still wacky from the pregnancy hormones at this point. She was an a-hole, but I expect that when she's further recovered and rested, you'll be able to discuss it properly, where she'll be able to understand your perspective and be contrite. Not an a-hole. You are still grieving, and it was a shock to your system that brought back things you were still bothered by. Your sister was an a-hole for trying to force you to hold your nephew when you were still hurting. If anything, your sister owes you an apology for her fits of anger and absolute disregard for your feelings. You didn't do anything wrong and didn't know you would be triggered when put in that position.